Mhm. Welcome to Global Citizen Life podcast. Today on the show, we have Luba joining us. Thank you very much, Luba, for your time today.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
You are originally from Kazakhstan and
Mhm.
now living in the beautiful country of Costa Rica. So, kind of a two-part, one question, two-part. Out of all the places you've traveled to, and I know you've been to many, why did you choose Costa Rica as the place to call home? And then within Costa Rica, where are you and why did you choose that city or town?
Yeah,
So I
that's a
guess it's
big
three
question.
parts.
For sure. So, well, first of all, you're right. I have traveled a lot. I've traveled to over 40 countries. My parents went through their first immigration when I was just 2 years old, and we traveled to Israel, and then I grew up mostly in Canada. And when I was about early 20s, I started feeling like, I was doing the same thing as everybody else. I was working really hard, had lots of hours, just got my first mortgage, I had my first place and feeling really independent and grown up. And in the back of my mind, I always wanted to travel to South America and Central America. And it was like constantly coming up for me. And I kept asking my friends, and they'd say yes. And then their life would change. And then they'd say yes. And then their life would change. And then finally, after actually my exes was like, yes, I'll go with you. And then we ended up breaking up. And that day I bought my ticket to Costa Rica. I was like, I'm done waiting.
Yep.
I'm going on a one-way ticket and we're going to see what happens. So I got to Costa Rica just kind of thinking that it was just going to be a little pit stop and it's not going to really be anything significant. I first landed in Samara, which is really close to
Mhm.
Nasara, which is a very popular area and full of expats now. And I was there for about a month and I really enjoyed it. My first stop was La Fortuna and seeing the
Mm,
volcano and the nature.
right.
Like I was like, wow, there's something else going on here that I've never experienced before. Like the amount of nature, now I call it the tree to person ratio. I really enjoyed the tree to person ratio. And I just felt really like as part of the world in that place. It was very
Mm.
strange. The first day, someone asked me, "Do you speak Spanish?" And I was like, "Sí," and I didn't. But I was just like, you know what? We're just gonna go for it. I was a Latin dancer my entire life, so I was like, it's in my heart, it's in my blood, it's in my soul. So I just really felt at home, especially in just the beautiful nature. So after
Mhm.
traveling for quite a bit, for 10 months all through South America on my own, I actually tried to go back to Canada and I just didn't fit back into the box. And I
Right.
tried all these different places. And the closest people that I really was getting connected to were actually going to Costa Rica.
Yep.
So they were going there for an Envision festival that it had 10 years in Uvita, the Envision
Mhm.
Festival. It's a music festival. And so we were going to sell chocolate there. We were going to be the chocolate fairies.
Nice.
So as you can imagine, February, hottest month of the year, not a great time to sell chocolate at an outdoor 5-day music festival. So
No,
all of our
not really.
chocolate became chocolate milk. And it was a big disaster. However, I did get to Costa Rica again on a one-way ticket, and this time I was just like, okay, like there's no reason for me to leave now. All my friends started leaving one by one, and I just stayed. And within like I think a couple months, maybe 3 months, I met my now husband, and that was it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great. I mean, it is great because sometimes, sometimes people plan and they pick a place and that works and they do research and they spend a long time. And then sometimes we just decide to go thinking it's going to be a pit stop and it ends up being longer. Or I know as similar to what you said that it was a pit stop, then there's some other travels along the way and then it kind of circles back around to that place. And I do think it's great for people to check out a number of places to
Totally.
find out what kind of suits them and whether it's how you did it by starting with one and then traveling through to others. Some people, if they have kids and things like that, on summer holidays to go check out a new destination each summer holiday, Christmas holiday, Easter break, whatever works for them, to check out a variety of places prior to moving. Because even within the same country, within Costa Rica, the vibe and the feel is
So
different for
different.
all of those. The weather is different. When I
Yeah.
lived there, I lived in Tamarindo, just outside of Tamarindo. And so it was like beach weather. It gets really hot. And I know other people who like more of Arenal, where it's the volcano, cooler, more kind of lush green, more rain, and they enjoy that. But so you get a different vibe depending upon the area of the country that you are in.
Exactly. So that's coming to your question too. Where in Costa Rica? So
Mhm.
I started off in the Platanillo area, which is
Mhm.
very close to Dominical. Dominical is
Okay.
much better known, and it's a surf town. It's just up the mountain from there. And I lived there for about 6 months and I really enjoyed it. And then I thought I wanted to be closer to the beach.
Mhm.
So once me and my now husband decided to move in together, we actually found a place very close to the beach, like 7 minutes away from Uvita Beach. And we lived there for about on and off for about 8 years.
Okay.
And then after that, it started changing really fast. So first of all, the climate, it's really hot by the beach.
Mhm.
Anywhere by the beach is super hot. And it just wasn't working for us anymore. That temperature was just too much. And also Uvita started changing dramatically. Like the infrastructure that was going in was like all the buildings and all the retreat spaces and everything. So many homes. I can't even tell you, like, I think they've like quadrupled in the last year or two. Just the amount of building, I didn't find it sustainable. It wasn't respecting the nature anymore. And
Mhm.
so it was just not really feeling aligned anymore. So we actually ended up by emergency going up the mountain. Jonah's dad has a hotel in Tinamastes, which is again above the Dominical area, and it's about 4,000 feet. And so it's nice and cool, and the climate's different. And yes, it rains more, but it's like a lush haven again, right? So we ended
Mhm.
up going there, um, and ended up staying. Again, that was supposed to be a visit. I was pregnant and I was having a few issues, so we needed to be closer to the hospital. That's why we went up there. And so I was like, yeah, this is fine. We're just going to be here for like a little short time. And then the longer it went on, the more we realized that this was more of our place. And so we just rented out our Vita house, and it still is on long-term rent. And yeah, so it's been a little bit of a journey, and I've seen all over Costa Rica now. And the reason I really like Tinamastes is it's a lot quieter. There's way less growth, which is nice. It's still, you still get to know all the community, all the locals. Like I have my organic chicken delivered to my door, like little things like that. I know where the
Nice.
farmers market is, and now actually the farmers just come with the food to my house if I don't want to go anywhere. And so it just all of it, I feel like there's a lot of support and in the community, and there's a lot of love, and it feels really good to be there. And so that's why we've enjoyed being up the mountain a little bit more.
And you mentioned how things change. And I know even the time that I was there, I moved to Costa Rica back in 2011. And so it is completely different from
Mhm.
what it was in 2011. And I think that's something that people do need to think about or take into consideration is every place is always going to change. And generally speaking, a lot of the places that we initially think about, or where there's already a reasonable sized expat community, those places are going to grow substantially because more and more people are moving internationally. Costa Rica went from I don't want to say unknown in 2011 because it wasn't unknown, but it definitely was not nearly as popular as it is now. And so prices have gone up, substantially more people, more buildings, more resorts, more of all of those things. And so I do think it's a good idea for people to think about, if I want to be in this area where there's already a reasonable size expat population, that how are you going to feel in 5, 10, 15 years where it's not a guarantee, but it's a really good chance that that area is going to grow a lot. And are you going to be okay with that? Or do you want to, maybe that's a temporary saying, okay, we're going to be here for probably 5 or 10 years, and then we'll really get to know the country and then be potentially willing to, or at that point, then wanting to move elsewhere because those areas have more and more people. A lot of times people like beach areas, whether they live there or just for vacation. And if it's popular, more and more people hear about it, more and more vacationers come. So then there's more rental. And it could be that vacation flow of people. So Costa Rica, when it's winter in North America, a lot of people come
Mhm.
down to escape. I mean, initially
Yes.
I was one of them.
Right?
And and so there is that kind of influx of a lot of people during tourist time, and then it's a little bit quieter.
Definitely.
And it really comes down to thinking of, what do you want? What suits you? What are you looking for? And is it a move full time? For some, maybe it's starting as a vacation place to go to, and then in 1, 3, 5, 7 years, whatever it may be, to then move down full time or spend more time there. And it really is, I think, important for people to know themselves, but also to be flexible because places are changing, and they are
Mhm.
changing quickly.
Yes, and we change as well, like it's
Mm,
funny because at first I think a lot of expats want to come to a community with other expats, right? Because they want to be able to speak English, for example, to them or whatever language you're coming with, and they want to be able to kind of feel more at home, right? And it's easier to
mm,
feel at home with like-minded individuals. So at first it's a very, very big plus. But then as it keeps growing, it changes the relationship of it because now
mm.
the locals are struggling, for example, right? A lot of the
Right.
locals near the beach can't afford to live there anymore because prices have skyrocketed because so many people are coming in. And a lot of
Right.
people share, like, let's say I see Facebook posts all the time. People are like, I have a $5,000 budget and who can accommodate me? Like that. So that scales things up even more. And then
Mm.
completely unattainable for locals. We have to remember
Oh,
that
yes.
minimum wage is like less than $1.50 still an hour in Costa Rica, right? So
Wow.
having a livable space for the locals, I think is very important. We don't want to be the people coming in that push them out. No one wants to be that person, right? And so it's
Mm.
a really big question is also like, what are you bringing to that community? Like, to me, that's a very important question. You can't just come to the community thinking, okay, like that's it, I'm moving, this is going to be my new way. And I see a lot of people trying to, for example, impose their ways onto the local
Oh, I
or
hate that.
onto some, trying to change their, we don't see it as much about religion anymore, but we definitely see it in the way of life, like trying
Mhm.
to push new things onto them and whatever. And so it's like, well, wait, we're the visitors, right? Like, or the
Mhm.
animals. They're trying to push out the animals and they're trying to push out the insects and they're trying, and I get that because no one wants to live with insects, right? I totally get that. But there's ways to do that that are in alignment, and there's
Yes.
ways to do that that aren't. And so
Mm.
I always want people to think about their impact and what ripple effect is it going to create? Is it going to create a better place for everybody, or is it going to be worse, right? So
Right.
if you're coming and you're making the place better, great. Come on up, right? So just really think about the intention and then go from there is one big piece that I want people to think about.
Absolutely. I remember, just as you were saying that, even just about the wildlife, that I would be working on my computer or whatever, and out of the corner of my eye, I would see something move. And I would know exactly. I'm like, scorpion. And I would go over and I'd get the broom and the long handled dustpan because I didn't want to get too close. And I would sweep them up in the dustpan, and I would go outside to the end of the driveway and toss them out and be like, don't come back. I don't want to have to kill you.
Right, totally.
And I had a snake go through my house, which was pretty
Hmm.
creepy. I had a tarantula. I don't know how he got in, but I mean, and it was a good size because
Oh,
I came home with my daughter one day. It was the evening, so it was a little bit dark. And I'm like, what is that? And my daughter, she's like, oh, it's a tarantula, mom. I'm like, no, it's not. Like, mom, I see them at school all the time. Like, it's a
yeah,
tarantula. And
yeah,
it's like, oh, what do I? So I opened up all the doors because I had patio doors and side doors, and I got the
yeah.
broom and I swept him like hard, and
Yeah.
then he stood up because I just made him mad. Right. And I
Yeah.
got up the broom again and I swept him really hard. This time he went outside and I quickly closed the door. And again, I said, you come back in here,
Don't
I'm
come
going to
out.
have to kill you. And I don't want to have to do that. And I swear it was probably 3 days later. I've got long curtains and I pull open the curtain and right at face level, there's a tarantula. Like, and I was like, but luckily he was outside. So I was like,
Oh
you're
God.
lucky.
He kept
You're
his word.
outside. Like, but it scared the crap out of me because it was
For
like
sure.
right
For sure. The
there.
biggest one I've seen was like as big as my hand. And I've seen
Mhm.
it was interesting. I saw the cockroach and the tarantula side by side inside, both the size of my palms, both the biggest ones I've ever
Wow.
seen. And I was like, wow. And I mean, through this last 10 years, I can't even tell you how many I've seen.
Oh
Scorpions,
yeah.
tarantulas, all of that. You're gonna see it,
Yeah. Well, you're
The
in you're
cr
in you're in a tropical place, and so
you're
you
in the
have to
jungle.
expect it. I
Yeah.
had when I was renting out my place after I had initially left, I had a gentleman say, "Well, do you have bugs there?" And I said, "It's Costa
Of
Rica.
course.
Like if you don't want any bugs at all, don't move to Costa Rica. Like
Yes.
you have
Don't even
to,
come on vacation to Costa Rica.
yeah, like there's
If you're
all
that
kinds of
bad with
things. Like
it.
that's
Yeah,
what it is.
totally.
There's all kinds of noises. At first,
Totally.
when I looked at my house when I was looking at it before I bought it, and it was like almost like on cue, the howler monkeys went by and they're making all their noise. And I'm like, oh, that's so amazing. Yeah, fast forward years later at 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm like, would you just shut up already?
I know the sun is coming up.
I'm
Yeah, the
just
most
trying to sleep. Or I got to know too, if it was really going to rain, like those, the real rains, they would start to make noise. And I don't know, it's something that was different about it. And obviously being
the
cloudy and things.
pitch.
And I would know, and I'm like, oh, it's going to start to rain within about 2 minutes. And
Hmm.
because they started to make that noise, all like letting each other know the rain
Yeah,
is coming, and within 2 minutes, it would be pouring rain.
totally. The most unwelcome visitor that we ever had was a white-faced monkey, believe it or not. So
Oh.
this is an unusual one. The white-faced monkey, it was a
Mm-hmm.
male, and males that are not with their troops are known to be extra aggressive and extra bravo, is as Costa Ricans would call them. Bravo kind of just means like it's brave, but in like the sense of like in your face brave.
Right.
and um and he kept coming around and like knocking, like pounding, not knocking, pounding at our windows, at our sliding glass
Oh.
doors. We weren't sure what was happening. We thought maybe he was getting aggressive with his own reflection or something. And but the weird part is this was happening when my daughter was like really young and she was napping, and he'd always come around at nap time and pound on her door to try to wake her up. It was the weirdest thing. And then he
Wow.
got to the point where he was throwing things off of our balcony, like onto the creek beside us. So this is a small monkey, right? Like they're like yay tall, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, but he, with his force and his momentum, he would get our rocking chairs made out of wood into the creek, off the balcony into the creek. So we'd come
Oh.
back to broken chairs, to broken furniture, and we're like, did someone like, the first time I was like, did someone break in? Like, why would they throw our furniture into the creek? Like, this makes no sense.
Mm.
It was the monkey. And then the last time we saw him, he had a little bit of like something was going on with his leg. Maybe a dog bit him or something, because he was like definitely not 100%. And then we never saw him again. But he was
Oh,
like pounding at
wow.
our doors. And, I've heard of monkeys going into doors if they're open to get your food from the
Hmm.
kitchen. Like that actually happens.
Oh, yeah. And I remember even the first time that I was there just on vacation, and they would say, don't leave stuff on your terrace outside, even if you think it's whatever floor, because the cleaning lady didn't steal it. It literally
Yes,
was the monkeys
totally, totally.
or the
It's
maintenance person or
amazing.
whoever, like and they would say, it's the monkeys. They steal things. They're, unfortunately, they become used to people. And
Yes.
so with the ones that are more aggressive, um, we definitely have to be aware of that. Very rare that that would happen, but
Yes.
I mean, at
It
resorts, yeah,
happens.
the monkeys steal things often.
Totally.
Raccoons go through the garbage. I had a plate of food one time. We are at an all-inclusive resort, and this massive iguana jumped up on my lap to take the food off my plate.
Yeah,
kind of freaked me out a little bit. And what I
of
was
course.
mostly worried about is because they're claws, right? And they're not
Right. You
clean.
don't
And
want to get
then if there's
infected.
infection and stuff.
Yeah.
But luckily it was all fine. I mean, this thing was massive. It scared the crap out
Totally.
of me.
Yes.
Um,
And so this is why you need to try things out before you buy. It brings me back to that,
right.
like really living the life. And so I always say to people, like, don't liquidate and then move here for the first time. Like, come and visit, rent first for like a
Mhm.
year at least, especially if you want to be here full time. It's really
Right.
important to see a rainy season, for example, and a
Yes.
dry heat season too, depending on
Yes.
what your weakness is, because
Hmm.
those things will both surprise you at their intensity. Like Costa Rica is the nature, it's remarkable and super intense. So the heat
Hmm.
is hotter. The
Yeah.
the showers that you expect, no, they're like full on downpours. Like,
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so it's very important to try before you buy. And one of the things that we did actually, so we signed up for a program called Home Exchange. And
Okay.
with home exchange, it was wonderful because we get to try before you buy. How it
Mhm.
works basically is, let's say me and you are talking and you want to come to Costa Rica and I want to go where you are, right? So
Mhm.
if we're on a home exchange platform, we can go ahead and exchange homes. So you come to me and I come to you at the same time. That's like the most practical way. But a lot of people aren't able to find the same person for this relationship, right? Some people need to
Right.
go a little bit later, like not at the same time. Maybe they have secondary homes or different trips. So you can accommodate that. Or the best way that we do it is with guest points. And so basically, I give you points for your home and you take your points anywhere else you want in the world.
Oh,
And
wow.
there's,
Okay.
yeah, so there's over 200,000 people now signed up, 200,000 homes on Home Exchange. And there's quite a lot of selection in Costa Rica and all over the
Mhm.
world, amazing
Mhm.
places. And what you can do is you can do these exchanges. So, because I mean, I manage Airbnbs as well. So Airbnbs are great if that's, the way that you want to go. But what I really enjoy about
Mhm.
Home Exchange is that you're actually living in someone else's house and you're really like feeling what it is like to be part of it, like in their life.
Mhm.
So you usually get a chance to speak to their neighbors because they'll introduce you, or you have the things that you don't even know that you may need for Costa Rica, like you
Right.
were saying, the big broom and the dustpan with the long handle, and things that you don't really know until you're there. And so it gives you also a relationship with your host that you can ask them any questions that you want, and they're invested in you because you're in their house. And so it gives you a chance to really commit to a place. You can go for one night, or you can do an exchange for a year or two. I think the longest exchange ever done on the platform is over a year. It's like a year and a half.
Wow.
Two people had an exchange for a year and a half, which is amazing.
Yeah.
So it's a really great way. Like, instead of liquidating your home, I suggest people to go and actually sign up for something like Home Exchange. And then, if they are open to that, it's a great option. And I'll
Mm.
I'll put my referral link in with your comments and stuff. I'm not sure how you do
I'll
that,
make
but
sure they're in the show notes
for
for
sure. But there
everybody
you go.
to have that because it is really important. And as you said, how people prefer to travel. If they want Airbnb, that's great. Home exchange is great. I do pet sitting. And
Yes.
so I travel quite a bit with that. Not everybody wants responsibility of a pet. I get it. I
Yes.
love them and I travel a lot. So I like doing that.
Yes.
I'm actually pet sitting right now. And so
Me too.
there's many ways, but it's important to spend time in that location. And I always say, even if somebody's limited and they want to move, but maybe because their kids are in school and they don't have a lot of time, I always say try to go in what you think is the worst season. So if you
Mhm.
don't like me, I don't like winter. So for me, the worst season to travel somewhere would be their coldest season or rainy season. And knowing that and talking to people during it, is this a normal season? So let's just go with Costa Rica rainy season. Like, is this a normal rainy season or is it raining more than normal or is this less than normal? Because if I'm okay with the season that I don't like, then I should overall be okay. And for people who don't
Yes.
really like the heat or too hot, then you go in the hottest, driest months that are available if you can and see, do I like this or not? Or it's okay, but maybe then those are the times that I'm going to travel to other places. Because
Totally.
a lot of us who move abroad, we still like to travel. We still want to go
Yes.
other places. And so maybe that's a time. that you travel to go to other places. But it is really important because you might not always be able to be gone during that season that you
Yes.
don't like. And if the most uncomfortable season for you is not bad and it's okay, then you know as well, okay, I can handle the season and
Totally.
it will pass. And then it's, the other things. How far away from my home city do I want to
Mhm.
be? Or does it matter? For some people, it doesn't
Yes.
matter. Some people, elderly parents and things like that,
Mhm.
might say, I don't want to be 20 hours away on 3 airplanes as I am
Yes.
in Montenegro to get back to Canada. It's very long and it's not fun. But I'm okay with that because I don't do it very often, generally, at least just once a year. And I make it
Yes.
worth it. I'm there for about 6 weeks usually. Um, and so it's knowing that, but it is very important to know what we like and don't like. So what are some of the things that you know now that maybe you wished you would have known? And
In the
it's I know
beginning.
that's hard to say because a lot of things have changed, but what do you know now that you're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, if I would have known it would have been this way," or if I would have known before I came, not that you would do anything different, but just,
Right.
"Oh, if I could have prepared differently or something."
Definitely, definitely. Well, I definitely wouldn't have made all that chocolate to take to Envision. That's for sure.
I can
So don't
understand
bring
that one.
anything like chocolate or anything that will melt. I wish I didn't bring my salt lamp, for example, because that thing is long gone, melted away as well. People are like, really love those things, those pink
Mhm. Yep.
Himalayan or whatever. Yeah, don't bring anything that will melt. And don't bring anything that's like natural materials, like leathers and things like that. They don't do very well in the climate. So like I wish I'd left more of those things at home and just brought the more natural materials like the cottons and things like that that don't tend to mold as quickly. But that's I wish I was more prepared for the mold because that's a for especially the beginners that are coming in, they get a lot of them have allergic reactions to the mold that they don't even realize it's from the
Mm.
mold because mold, I mean, in such a climate, super humid, hot, all this, it's very hard to not have mold at all. And so I wish I knew about things like ozone machines that eliminate mold from the beginning and taken maybe one of those down with me so that I had a practice to be able to eliminate the mold before it started affecting my health, which it definitely did after some time, which is totally normal. So many people go through that.
Mhm.
And I wish I was also more aware that when you get to a more natural place and you're on the circadian rhythm and everything, which you totally get on with Costa Rica, Costa Rica is really special because it has 12 hours of sun and 12 hours of night
Yeah.
every night. There's no need to change your clocks back or, do any of that stuff because it's so in sync and it helps your body get
Mm.
into that rhythm. Like, you wouldn't call anyone in Costa Rica after 8 p.m., for example, because you respect that that's downtime. If they're not asleep, they're close to it. It's not like the lifestyle in North America where I feel comfortable calling till about 10, I would say 10:30 max, depending,
Hmm.
knowing obviously elders, this and that, but in general,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
But no, Costa Rica is like closes business at like I wouldn't do a work call after 6 for sure, no matter what. Just in
Mm.
no way would I do Sundays.
Right.
Sunday family day. So just knowing more about the culture, I think would have helped, and knowing more to what to expect would have helped as well, and preparing with the things that I would have brought down. Um, and and yeah, and I wish I did know about the home exchange and the pet sitting and all that beforehand, because I think that would have that may have changed things for me if I was able to know that that was an option. Maybe I wouldn't have sold everything so quickly. Maybe I would have still had those assets and sold them when it was in more favorable conditions later, not feeling like I needed to.
Mm.
And bringing us back to the pet sitting, I did want to mention. So in Costa Rica, it's a lot harder to find pet sits unless you already know people. So I'm also on trusted house sitters, and I do love trusted house sitters. I'm pet sitting right now. I have a great dog I'm taking care of. Callie's amazing. And
Nice.
so I do that as well.
Hmm.
However, in Costa Rica, there's so few options on trusted house sitters, for example.
Okay.
And the only time that we've managed to find a pet sit was through actual common friends or from
Mm.
posting on like community groups, but it takes way more effort than like your typical. So
Right.
usually people already have people in Costa Rica that like they are that they know and do that for them. So that's why I think home exchange is a lot more practical for a place from Costa Rica.
Mm.
And also, if you do have a place in Costa Rica that is on home exchange, people want it so badly, even off the off season. So you don't need to worry about like leaving your home during the season that you don't want to be here. And you can easily get it rented out on home exchange, for example, and have, trusted people that are taking care of your home. So that's something that I would prepare for as well, if you know that you do want to travel. And for us, yes,
Mm.
we go and see family all the time. Um, and I wish I kind of knew that, because I feel like afterwards I let go of a lot of things, thinking that I'm moving to Costa Rica.
Right.
And
That
I
means I have
did,
to give it all up and I have to just walk
right.
away and bring nothing with me but two suitcases, which is so not true.
No, you can definitely, I mean, right. So just know that things in Costa Rica, it's so much harder to find quality things. You can find a lot of things, but they break faster and their
Mm.
quality is just like way different and they're way more expensive. So like even let's talk about for a moment about cars, right? Cars have a
Oh, that's a
50% tax.
yeah.
If you're not aware, Costa Rica has 50% tax on cars, meaning that whatever your car is worth in North America, double it.
Yeah.
So if you sell your Subaru and you expect to get the same Subaru for the same price, double your expenses. And your
Mm.
expenses also including the time at the mechanics, like quadruple the time at the mechanics spends, if
Oh, I
not more.
know.
Like a lot of people are like, I'll just get like an old, oh, that's another mistake I made. I'll just get an old car that I can afford. That means you're never going to drive your car because it's mostly going to be at the mechanics.
Right. And they're waiting for a part that you have to pay for
Oh
upfront so
yeah.
they can order it and it'll be tomorrow, which is mañana, which is mañana, which is mañana, which is mañana, which maybe 5 or 7 days later it is
Oh, if
time.
you're lucky, it's usually coming from China and it's usually a rebuilt engine with no guarantees,
Oh.
And so there's a lot of things that you need to weigh in. So a lot of people are
Mhm.
like, "Oh, it seems like such a hassle to drive my car down and I'm going to need to pay my taxes." Right, you will. However, if you
Mhm.
have a good car, it might be worth it because
Right.
that way you get to keep your sturdy car. Because if you're buying a car in Costa Rica, depending, like if you buy it from the city, it's better. But like if you're buying it, like there's 4x4s everywhere because you need them, right? Like I
Right.
wouldn't go to Costa Rica without a 4x4 unless you're just staying in San Jose, which is kind of like, what's the point then, right?
Yeah, you can be in
So
any city.
exactly. So just know that there's going to be a lot more rickety rackety roads and there's going to be a lot of
Mhm.
more bumps on along the way
Oh, yes.
and things go a lot slower. So just be prepared for the slow pace of life that you're looking for. But that means lower your expectations for things happening for real mañana. Like
Yeah.
it's like the Costa Rican mañana, which is like you said, who knows? Another thing they love to say in Costa Rica, si Dios quieres, if God wills it. If God wills it. So you ask someone, oh, will you be
Mm.
there? They say, if God wills it. And it's true because if God wills it, there will be a storm and no one will be anywhere. So I understand, but like it's a different culture.
Mhm.
For example, there's no confrontation. They do not do confrontation. They'll bluntly
Right.
lie to your face instead of
Because they don't
say,
want a confrontation. Instead of saying like, can it be done in 3 days? They'll just say yes, even though they know it's not. And then you'll come back and be upset and they'll be like, oh, tomorrow, tomorrow. And it's unfortunate because I understand that they don't want to make people upset, but then by not telling the truth for people to plan things, then that's why they get upset.
totally, totally, totally. And I've never had anything arrive early in Costa Rica. Okay. Like
Doesn't
ever.
exist.
Okay. That's no such thing. It's only been tardy, always. So just like be prepared for that. So if you're like, sending all your belongings, for example, to Costa Rica, like send it months in advance if you actually want to see it there when you get there, for example. And that might
Mhm.
sound difficult to some people, but it is what
Or
it
just be
is.
prepared to wait.
Yes.
Just be prepared
Lower the
to wait
expectations. Yeah.
and it will come. And when it does, great.
Totally, totally. So these are like things that I wish I would have known. I wish I would have understood the culture a little bit more so that I
Mhm.
understood when they said mañana that it doesn't actually mean mañana and that when they said,
Right.
si Dios quieres, that I understood what they meant, that,
Literally.
maybe,
Mhm.
maybe it basically means maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
and and not take things like personally because I think in North America we're used to, first of all, we're used to immediate. We're used to
Yes.
like Amazon, for example, like wrecked us. Like same day delivery, overnight, da, da. Great.
Mhm.
Not ever going to happen in Costa Rica. Things take so much
No.
longer. And so just like being not putting pressure on people is really important because that's how you lose really great people. Like,
Right.
unfortunately, my best housekeeper quit on me because I was like a little bit too much for her because I was like, no, no, mañana, right? Like, like trying to stick to my way of life, and it didn't work for her. And a lot of Costa Ricans will not like that. And they will like, you will see the distancing and you'll see the face and you'll see, them backing away from your life.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, it's a catch because often people say they want the slower paced life. And
Right.
we're used to it when we're on holiday because we're on
Yes.
holiday and we don't really care because it's 1, 2, 3-ish weeks and we have nothing to do. But
Right.
when we live somewhere and that kind of holiday phase wears off, then we kind of come back to that expectation because we're so used to it that we need to realize, oh no, wait, that's why I lived here because I wanted a slower paced life. So for my life to be a slower pace, everybody else is slower. And so therefore, things that are important to me right now are not a priority to anybody else at all. And
Mhm.
that can be a very hard adjustment that's what we want. And we want it, I don't want to just say like in theory, but then the actual living it can be very, very difficult for some people to adjust to.
Totally. Yeah. I completely agree. Because we think we want it, because we want it for like our lifestyle, but we don't want it in our business life, let's say.
Right.
You know what I mean? So,
Mm.
we don't want it when it comes to how long will my washing machine not be working, or, things that we're more accustomed to. So
Hmm.
it's part of the lifestyle. So if you're not okay with that, like maybe somewhere else is better, and because that's the way things
That's the
are,
way
which
it
is
is
again
there.
why
Yeah.
we have to try it before you buy
That's
it.
right. That's right. That's
Yes.
why it's important, whether it's Costa Rica or any other Latin American country or moving to Europe or Asia, like wherever it may be, there's always going to be things that are going to irritate us. Like
Yes.
I've been to many countries as you have. I've lived in many and I've talked to many people and I've said to them, I said, I wish I could take this from this country, this from this country, this
Yes.
from this, and this from this, and put them all together. And then I would have the perfect
Here
country. Because
we go.
there is no such thing as a perfect country. In my head,
No.
there is all those things. But even sometimes too, when I go through everything in my head, I'm like, well, that doesn't even make sense. Because I
Yeah,
can't
yeah,
have
totally.
both of those things because
Right.
they just don't make
Totally.
sense. And so we have to really realize and think about. And I say to people, make a list of all the things that are important to you, or the list of everything you want. Like, and that should be a really long list because you just put all
Yes.
of those things in. And then you go through and you cross out a whole bunch of them because you're like, does that really matter? No. Does that really matter? No. Do I really need that? No. And then you'll slowly get down, and then you should get kind of a
Five.
five-ish
Yep.
non-negotiables, like
Yeah.
these things. And so, like, one of my non-negotiables is cold winter, and that temperature change. Coming from Canada, we're used to -30, -40 degrees Celsius. And then I was like, I just don't want anything at minus anything. Now I'm like, under +10. I don't really want,
Yes.
like, it's just
Yes.
getting to be warmer and warmer as I've moved to other places. I could
Yes.
probably handle rainy season, depend upon how rainy, maybe then I would travel. And then on the flip side though too, especially if it's humid, over 35, not so much
Not
fun.
so
If it's
nice.
dry, okay. But and so to find that perfect place, because then it has to be by the beach too, because I like the water. So I mean, I'm coming
Right.
up with almost the impossible. Like
Unrealistic.
it's
Yeah.
unrealistic. So I have to think of, okay, what can I kind of give and take, or where would be okay? And that's just weather. I mean, that's just a simple thing to really kind of think about when you have to then think of true lifestyle and city and how far from an airport or train or to fly back home if that's what you're going to do, or I'm okay with everything shutting down in the middle of the afternoon, or I'm not, and everything is
Right.
closed on Sundays, or all of those things that are important. If you like rock climbing or parasailing or gliding or whatever. Like you got to be in a hilly place. And it's all those
Yeah,
things of what are you going to do in your spare time? What are you going to do in your free time? Because some of us are still working. Part of the reason why we want to move abroad is maybe we don't want to be working 12-hour
as
days,
much.
but we
Yeah,
want to be doing other things. And whether it's building that community and having lunches or dinners with people or those sporting activities. Are we surfing? Are we hiking? Are we having a writing club or whatever it may be? We also want to look at, are those things available in that area and region that I'm looking at living in?
totally. And so my five, for example, like I did the same
Mhm.
exercise. I did that. And your five changed with the lifestyle as my lifestyle changed. Because at first I was a single woman, right? I was like selling chocolate and chaga and doing my thing. So my list was
Mhm.
different, right? And then
Right.
now I have three children. So my list
Completely different lifestyle, different
completely
chapter.
different life, right? It's a new chapter. And I think also the move up to the mountain to Namaste, it's only about 25 minutes from the beach. So my husband is a surfer, so it still worked for him to be able to do
Mhm.
that. And one of the things for me, one of my main five right now is so my kids grow up in a place that's a lot more natural and more of a community feel. So
Mm.
we ended up staying at a place called that I manage. It's called Colinas Tinamastes, and it's beautiful because it's in the Tinamastes Mountains, and it's a gated property, more or less. It's a big
Mhm.
one, and there's three casitas there, two apartments, and eight hotel rooms. And so
Okay.
there's quite a few long-term renters there, and we
Mhm.
have great caretakers. And so why that's important to me is my kids got to be free range children. And so
Mhm.
they could just go outside the door and I don't need to worry about them. That was my favorite part of growing up is I was part of the generation that got to go outside unsupervised.
And it was just come home before it gets dark.
Yes. And now, and now like coming back to the States, like I have relatives being like, you're not watching your child right now? Like they're like outside. And I'm like, they're in the front yard. Like, and everything's fine, but it's not fenced. What if they run on the street? I'm like, well, I've told them not to run on the street. Like. So
Yeah.
anyway, so it's a different lifestyle. And like some people want
Mm.
that and some people don't. And
Mhm.
so I really value free range children. So I need to live in a place where I feel like my neighbors are also looking out for my kids, that they don't mind having visitors come by sometimes and
Mhm.
politely knock on the door and ask if it's a good time. Of course, we've talked about it. But like in general, they can go, spend some time with Miguel planting trees. They can go with Judith and watch her sew. They can go and do yoga with one of our neighbors. They can go swimming. They're very good swimmers. Like there's things for them to do without me because the more children I have, and I think I'm done, but the more you have, the less capability you have of always supervising your children. And I wouldn't even want that for them anymore.
Yeah.
I
They
really,
need to be able to make decisions, make mistakes, learn the consequences, get hurt, and realize, oh, maybe I shouldn't be climbing in that tree again. Or they'll just do it again because that's okay. The broken arm will heal, and that's just their personality.
totally, totally. And we've had many scrapes and bruises and
Of
ouchies
course.
and many tears. And I mean, right now we're in North America, and my kids are like, I asked my little one who's 3, what's your New Year's resolution? And his was, let's go back to Colinas Cinemastes. Let's go back to Costa Rica. And I was like,
Mm.
oh, that's your New Year's resolution. We are gonna do that. But it's amazing to see them wanting that lifestyle again. And
Mm.
even after all the things that they have here, which I think are more like a lot more materialistic, as
Yeah.
well as and obviously family's not materialistic, family's amazing, but just
There's a
having
lot of that
having
materialistic pressure, more
exactly
so in North America than in Costa Rica. And that was one of the
exactly
things when I moved there too, is that's when I noticed, even back in 2011, how materialistic everything was. It was even TV, like the advertisements, buy this, it'll
Mhm.
make you the envy of the neighborhood. If you can't afford it, Visa's got you covered and all that kind of stuff. And then when I
Yeah,
moved to Costa Rica, the commercials were for TV programs, sales
right.
on at the grocery store. Like it wasn't nearly as much as it was buy this stuff to make you feel good, buy this stuff, buy
No,
this stuff,
it's
buy
not
this stuff. It was
medical.
very
Yeah.
different.
Yeah, I find a lot of commercials here are food and medicine. You know, it's
Mm,
like, here, eat this junk and then buy our medicine kind
yes.
of story.
Well, it's funny, the United States, and I think it's New Zealand, but there's
Mhm.
only two countries in the world that allow for commercials for pharmaceutical drugs.
It's true. And that's really, it's weird because my daughter loves the commercials. She's like, maybe because she's never seen them, but she's almost
Hmm.
7 and she's like, she will watch the football games for the commercials. And we're not football people, her aunt is, but like, she will watch things for the commercials just because she's like, and that just tells me on how addictive they are and how like they're like
Yes.
meant to be programs that you're like
Hmm.
going into. And maybe that's why a lot of people want to leave the States, right? Or Canada or whatever. Like, let's be real, we don't want those programs all the time. And the more that we're aware of them, the less we want them. So that's part of the reason why I moved away. I didn't want to be part of the system of like overworking and not, just basically driven by materialistic things. I wanted like truer connection with the earth, with myself, with the people around me, and like
Hmm.
deeper understanding of the world, right? And I feel like
Right.
Costa Rica can definitely give you that. And it comes with so many different challenges.
Mhm.
Of course, of course, of course. And at the end of the day, I would still choose it. And there's things that I would, that I hate about it. Honestly, there are like really, really badly hate about it. And at the end of the day, I still choose it because nowhere is perfect.
That's right. No, nowhere is perfect, and we have to kind of weigh all the pros and cons. And everybody's list of pros and cons or benefits and challenges are different. And that comes back to making that list, going somewhere, checking it out, and seeing if it works. One nice thing that I do want to touch on before we go is Costa Rica also has several blue zones. And blue
Hmm.
zones are very unique areas of the world where they have the oldest living people in those zones. And I haven't done a lot of research into the blue zones, but I've read a little bit about several of them. And what I find is there's four main things that I've kind of found with those blue zones. And so one is weather. So the weather's
Hmm.
usually quite nice.
Hmm.
Um, I want to say exercise. People walk a lot. They go places, they walk
Yes.
a lot. They walk to the store, they walk down to the lake or the sea or the whatever. They're doing some walking. They're also eating healthy, a lot of
Hmm.
fresh stuff, and most times because they're walking to buy whatever groceries for the day or a couple of days. And they have community,
Hmm.
and that sense of community. And the community are the neighbors, the other people. And we can find community, whether it's a church community or a writing community, our friends, those types of things. But all blue zones seem to be really big on those four things. And Costa Rica's got a couple of blue zones.
Totally, totally. And also, even within that conversation, I don't want people to think that like Costa Rica is like super healthy, for example. Like it is and it's not. Let me elaborate here.
Right.
So
Hmm.
you were mentioning food, for example, right? Food is super important for our well-being in our body. Like if you give your body respect with your food, you will notice that there is a difference. Like
Hmm.
unfortunately, there's a lot of pesticides that are used in Costa Rica. A lot of people are like, oh, it's from a market or whatever. Like, unfortunately, that's not the case. You really do need to dig it a little deeper and find the organic sources. They totally exist. And there's many locals that thrive because they offer the organic way and have shifted um, even the way that they farm to be able to be healthier and more conscious of what they're putting into their body and into the earth, right? Because it's both. You're poisoning the earth,
Right.
you're poisoning yourself.
Hmm.
So it's not that you're not going to find pesticide in Costa Rica. You are, but there's also relationships that you can develop that will honor your body and the earth with actual organic practices. And again, it's hard because a lot of people will say, yes, it's organic, because like we were talking about the confrontation thing, they don't want to do that, right? But like, so it's really important to actually have like a deeper understanding and deeper relationship to understand, well, tell me more about what you're giving your chickens. Okay, you say you're giving them concentrate, for example. You know that part of concentrate, corn and soy and stuff, have huge amounts of pesticides and all sorts of GMOs and all sorts of bad things. Like that's not an organic chicken, even if it's coming from a farm.
Right.
So that's one thing to really note. It's like, I feel people are in the blue zones. I would imagine, are more aware of such things and that actually want to have that healthier lifestyle. And also remember that the cost of food in the stores, anything that's imported, again, goes through that 50% tax. So it's easier to not want the junk food because now your chips that are, maybe $3 in the States are costing you $7 or $8 in the store in Costa Rica, the same brand. So you're like, oh, maybe I don't need that, right? So that makes it a lot easier.
That's a good one.
Yeah, so anything packaged coming from a different country is over the top like expensive, right?
Mm,
Compared to the same food made in Costa Rica, for example, right? But for us, we like to make our own food from scratch as much as possible. Not saying we don't, buy things, we do, but as
mhm.
much as possible. And the other thing that I definitely want to mention, and it's a little bit controversial, I guess, for some people. We have different beliefs, and I respect whatever people choose with their own bodies, your choice. Completely agree with that. And like with vaccines, for example,
Mm.
touching on vaccines, if you're planning to have children in Costa Rica, you need to be aware that children in Costa Rica are considered Costa Rican property, unfortunately. And if you are in a hospital, you're not going to walk away from the hospital, private or public hospital, without vaccines. So a lot of people don't want vaccines for their children. They don't want the toxins and whatever heavy metals and all the things that are put into them, or might want to delay, or might want the homeopathic version, which does exist, or whatever else, whatever their
Mhm.
personal choices are. But if you're one of those people that has, really, really strong feelings about vaccines, um, giving birth in Costa Rica, your only option would be a home birth, and then being really, really in community to be able to understand what to do afterwards and knowing the right people and individuals from there. It's not an easy thing to do. So even if you are going to a hospital with children, let's say you have a little kid, they broke an arm, you go into the hospital and you're even a visitor, they can ask you for vaccine records. And if you don't show it to them, they will tell you that you need to vaccinate your child again with them before releasing them. There's been lots of stories like
Even if
that.
they've already been
Even if
vaccinated.
you need to show proof. So if
Because
you're
I
traveling
mean,
with
I don't
children,
travel with my child vaccination. I mean, she's like not a child anymore, but
right.
I never travel when she was a child anywhere in the world with proof of vaccination for anything. Is this
Yeah,
kind of new since COVID,
no.
or has it always been that way there?
It's been worse. It's been worse since COVID, I would
Okay.
say. It's not a new thing, but like children that aren't vaccinated without the papers are not welcome into this public school system. So you can only find private schools for them. And if you get put into the hospital, I've seen lots of disasters that way, where
Wow.
where kids were like given so many vaccines at once, for example, to catch them up or whatever it is, like they're just not being released. They had to like send documents from like Israel, even though that, they were Israeli passport holders. They had nothing to do with Costa Ricans, but especially for kids born in Costa Rica, it's really important to note. So, for me, I feel like vaccines definitely influence your health. And I feel like our immune system is what we need to build. And we build it through good food and good water and, good lifestyle, all these kinds of things. And it's a holistic
Mm.
approach instead of, let's fix it with medicine, like a pill or whatever. To me, medicine comes from the
Right.
earth as much as possible.
Mhm.
Not to say that like I wouldn't go to a hospital if I needed. Like my third kid, I had to birth her in the hospital. There was no choice, there's an emergency. I had my placenta underneath my baby.
Oh,
So there was no way to get her out
right.
otherwise. So in
Right.
that way, I'm so grateful for the medical system, like in the olden
Mm,
days, I wouldn't have been alive and probably she wouldn't either. And so
right.
that's a real thing. It's not that I'm saying don't ever do it, but
Mhm.
if you're the kind of person like me who wants to have control over my own health, my own body, my own rights, then that's something that really needs to be thought about as well. And like, are you okay, for example, with a home birth in that case? Because if you're not, and if you only want to do hospital births, then don't do it in Costa Rica if you're against vaccines.
Right. And lots of times it's a lot of those. I don't want to say that's a little thing because it is a big thing. But if and when we're thinking of everything, like that's kind of it's a detail that we wouldn't think about.
Right.
Right. And I had, even though I lived there for years, I never had an issue with that. My daughter was 13 when we moved there. And so when people ask me, like, other than a few things about school, I'm like, oh, well, when we were there, which now was a long time ago, anything other than that with young kids, it's all the information that I get is from other people. So that is something that's good to know if people are thinking, oh, if I go to Costa Rica and I have a baby, the baby's automatically Costa Rican. And so, yay, that's great. Sure, it is. However,
And
are you okay with this because this is the rules there, and are
yeah,
you okay with all of those things? And so a lot of times it is, we think about the obvious kind of big picture stuff immediately. But then the longer we're there and how long we're there, or what we're doing, then there's always things that we just don't think about.
totally, totally, totally. And that's why I say it's really important to do scouting trips, scouting trips where you
Mm,
go and you see different areas. Um, I suggest living in the space that you want to as much as possible, but even just seeing it,
mm,
feeling out nature. Like one of the Airbnbs that I run and I manage is called Roca Verde Retreat, for example. And it's this beautiful place in Rivas. Rivas is actually up further up the mountain from Dominical, even further. So it's even
okay.
cooler. And it's actually built around 4 huge boulders. And so it's kind of like a luxury cave, 2-bedroom luxury cave. And it's really
Oh,
gorgeous.
wow.
And a lot of people come there and they're just like, I've never been to such a natural place. And so like all of a sudden,
Mm,
like purpose comes to them, where like insight and all this kind of stuff. And a lot of them want to stay in that area, for example, or never leave that house. And Rivas is a really special area too, because it's got a lot of expats, but like way more low key because it's so far from the beach. It's like an hour away, but you have all your Waldorf and the Montessori schools and like, your farmers markets and things like that. So it feels like a really sweet community. So
mm,
we'll drop the link for Riva's for Roca Verde as well. And
absolutely.
yeah, but trying out places like this that you might not really know about is really beneficial. And talking to the locals there is really important
Mm,
to see like if it is a fit. Or like staying, like I said, in Colinas Tinamastes, we have short-term, long-term rentals, which is really great. And or home exchange and trusted house sitters, great options for scouting. But all of these things, I 100% would agree with you to always try it to make sure that it's actually something that is a fit. And the other thing that I
mm.
wish I knew as well is I wish I knew Spanish before I came. I really do. Because I think it's very important. Like I said, it's like, what are you going to give back to the community? How are you going to
Mm,
give it back if you don't speak the language, right? Like, are you just going to wait for people to speak English to you? Because honestly, a lot of Costa Ricans, unless they're young, don't speak English. And
mm,
even if they do, older people, like they are shy because they don't want to get it wrong. They're like so
right.
shy to speak English, even if they know it, even if they understand it. Like I have a relationship with someone for 10 years and I know he knows English. We've still never had an English conversation, so study it beforehand. And I have a really great teacher actually online that now is online, and I can contact me for her contact as well. And she has your first class is just $5 and then it's $10 an hour, and it's a private class, one-on-one. And the best part about that is that you can learn the culture at the same time as having your language classes. So because she will tell you about different expectations and different things, so you become a lot more prepared for a move
Mm,
or a long visit, whatever it may turn into, by knowing things like that, knowing the language, knowing the community and the people. And I think that's like some of the most important things to do, is really to, again, try to contribute and try to make the place better.
absolutely. I completely agree with all of that. So, Luba, I just want to say thank you very much for your time, and all the things that we spoke about today. We'll make sure all those links are in the show notes to make them easy for people to click on them and connect. And again, thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure.